Have you ever seen these cute little cases for tiny figures and plush and thought to yourself, yes, those are so cute, but I want to be able to wear my little guy as a different kind of accessory, not as a charm. Me too. These are very normal thoughts that very normal adults have. And as a very, very extremely normal adult, today I'm going to be making what I'm calling a little guy pocket protector. I think we can all agree that I'm spending my time very productively. The real inspiration for this project came from my jumpsuit. My wife got me this as a gift last year, and I'm just as obsessed with it now as I was day one. Except now I think I need to take it further, more over the top, more daisies. Enter these earrings from the Kitschy Cactus. These take it up a notch for sure. They're so cute. But what if my pocket was also a daisy? A big, cute daisy. And I could use it to safely carry around a little critter all day. These are big ideas that science isn't ready to explore, but I am. It's actually very brave. My hands are on camera a lot at this point, so I know a thing or two about nail polish. And I gotta tell you, Essie nail polishes, especially the Gel Couture line, they're so good. I'm thrilled to say that I've partnered with Essie for today's video, so let's take a quick minute for a manicure that will take our theme up a notch. Essie's Jelly Gloss series is really cool. You can do sheer layers to build up color, or just have one color for that subtle pop. Today, I'm going to use the color Bling It from Essie's Gel Couture line for my base color. Of course I'm going to go green to match my jumpsuit. For the white daisies, we'll use the color First Fitting. My trick for daisies is to draw just the lines on first, so the petals will be evenly spaced. Then add dots for the petals. Now we'll do tiny dots of Apricot Jelly Jelly Gloss for the center of the daisies. Look, all of these polishes are stunning, but that top coat, trust me, you want the top coat. Typically, I do my nails before bed, and in the past, I've definitely experienced that thing where you go to bed with perfect nails and wake up to some weird dent or smudge that's ruined your hard work. But that never happens now. The Essie Gel Couture Top Coat is quick drying and extremely glossy. It's the perfect last step to seal your manicure. I really can't go back to other top coats now. I'm spoiled by this. Here is my finished manicure. Over the top, kitschy, detailed, and the best part is it's going to last. Originally, I had the idea to work on this like 6 months ago. It was one of those things that just got stuck in my craw, and I kept drawing it and thinking about it, so I'm excited to finally be sharing this with you. These are all the things that you will need to make this today. To start, I'm going to be using a sewing machine. You don't have to have a sewing machine to do this project. It just makes it a lot easier, but it's possible to hand sew this. You're going to need your main fabric. I'm using 100% cotton today in like a goldenrod kind of color. The color's your choice. I find that not super thick fabric works best. I've done a lot of trial and error. Another thing you're going to need is fabric interfacing. If you've never used interfacing before, it's really cool. It has sort of like an adhesive that you can use an iron to activate, and it adheres to the fabric that you're ironing it on. I'll show you all about this and how to use it later on in the video, but you'll need that for sure. Another thing you're going to need today is some straight pins. I have had the same box of straight pins for, I don't know, I think since I was like 15, so they've been through the ringer, as you can tell. My box is not in the most beautiful of shape, but they work. break, so I replaced them right. The next thing you'll need is scissors. I have two pairs. One is fabric scissors, and the other is just regular paper scissors. It's up to you what kind you use, but I have both, so why not use both? The next thing you'll need is an iron. This one is kind of non-negotiable. You really need an iron for this project in order to get the really nice crispy edges that make this iconic daisy shape. Another thing I use is felt. Now this white felt I just got at the dollar store a while ago, and this yellow felt I actually bought at the fabric store. They're pretty much identical, so you can just use whatever kind of felt that you have on hand. They're all pretty much the same. I also need these magnets. These look kind of odd, I know, because they're all sticking together, but these are individual tiny little magnets, and they're really strong magnets. Like, they're heavy duty. Don't let their size fool you. You're going to need 4 magnets for today's project, but they really don't come in packs of 4, so you'll probably be like me and end up with this huge stack of magnets you don't really know what to do with. You'll also need a chopstick or some kind of long stick-like object. You could use a number of things. I mean, I just find it easy to use a chopstick because I have them. I've got some needles that I'm going to use for embroidery. There's all kinds of different shapes and lengths here. It doesn't really matter that much, as long as it fits your embroidery floss in the little loop. You'll also obviously need embroidery floss in whatever color you choose. Don't feel like you have to pick the same colors as me. Pick whatever color you want. I'm also using cement glue today, but you can also use fabric glue. I just happen to have cement glue, so that's what I'm going to use, as well as thread. I'm using the kind of thread that fits in my sewing machine because I'm going to be using my sewing machine. The last and final thing you'll need is this pattern. I made this pattern, and the link to download this 100% free pattern is in the description of this video. There are 2 patterns included in this. There is one for 2-inch figures, and there's one for 3-inch figures. I troubleshooted them a lot, and this is what I came up with. But it wasn't something that just came easily. I made a couple of prototypes first. I first measured the pocket on my jumpsuit because it needs to fit in there perfectly. And then I just made a bunch of practice ones out of paper. I really like working on a project like this and trying to kind of like think about what my idea is and problem solve it. After I sketched out my ideas, I scanned them in, and I also scanned in a ruler. The reason I did this is because when you're putting stuff in digital files, the sizes can get super wonky. So I wanted to include a ruler so that basically the scale could be always corrected. And I included the ruler right on the pattern. So when you print it out, it's really important that you check my ruler against a ruler that you have handy, just to make sure the proportions are right. Otherwise, the pattern might not work exactly to the specifications. So that's a very important process. These are my 2 prototypes. Okay, the first one, this is the white daisy. This is my very first one I made. I kind of think it looks like a fried egg. You can see the corners are not as neat. Like, I didn't figure out how to do that perfectly yet. I do really like the colors with the white daisy. And in this version, I have 4 petals on the bottom, but the next version I switched it so that the 4 petals are on the top and the 3 are on the bottom. Even though it's my first one, I actually think it's still really cute, and as you can see, it fits the little guy in it perfectly. The purple one was my second prototype. This one was already much, much better than the previous one. I also added a detail in this purple one where there's little notches under the front petals to keep it perfectly flat when it's all tucked into a pocket. And I also figured out how to make the scallops of the daisy much neater. So that's one of those things, every time I make one, I made it a little bit better until I perfectly refined the idea, the pattern, and now I have this for you, and I hope that you print it out and make one yourself. In my example today, I'm going to be making the one for 3-inch figures. This works really well for Sylvanian family calico critters for us North Americans, but you could use it for, gosh, so many types of different figures, and you could also make it bigger if you wanted to, like do your own thing, resize it. I am giving you the resources, so please make your own thing with it. I would love to see that. So the first step in making this is to cut out your pattern. We have the actual full daisy, and then we have the perfectly circle felt center. Now we need to cut out our fabric. We need to cut 2 pieces of the pattern in our main fabric. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold this over to make it really easy. And oh, that's a cat here. I am not used to having a pet. I gotta say, it's only been a couple months and I haven't gotten into the mindset that I'm a pet owner now. But of course the culprit is always nearby, and her fur stands out so intensely on anything it reaches. So that's a fun new thing that I get to do now, is use my little remover to get hair out of the way. Okay, so there's a couple ways that you can trace a pattern onto fabric depending on your sewing level. You may choose to do it differently, but this is how I'm going to do it because I think it's the easiest way to visually follow along. So I've got my fabric folded over so that there's 2 layers, and I'm just pinning my pattern onto the fabric to keep it stable. You know, for bigger fabric patterns, you might want to use more pins or even weights, but this is so tiny. You only really need 1 pin. So I cut that out. Now, this is very important. We are going to leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance. It's really good to have a ruler out if you have a hard time visualizing what a 1/4 inch looks like. And I'm going to use a colored pencil to very carefully trace the pattern onto the fabric. Because it's folded, you only need to trace onto the top layer, and we can just cut these out. But of course, when we cut it, we're not cutting on the line that we drew. We are going to leave a 1/4 inch of seam allowance. So I'm just using my ruler to double check and remind myself how much room I need to leave excess, and very carefully start cutting this pattern out and leaving a little excess room. Some patterns you need to leave more seam allowance, but with this one, it's pretty small and simple. So the 1/4 inch or so approximately is more than good enough. So here we have it. We have 2 layers, and this layer has our colored pencil on it. So we are going to make sure when we're sewing that will be tucked away, not to worry about that. As for the interfacing, we're going to use that exact same pattern, and we are going to cut just 1 layer of this. You don't need 2, just 1. We'll cut out a piece and go ahead and trace the pattern right onto this. The interfacing is really interesting because one side has this pebble texture and the other side is smooth. The side with the pebble texture, that is the adhesive, that's the glue. You want to be really careful because when we're using the iron, it will activate the glue and it will melt it. You can kind of think like how a glue gun works, heat is what makes it melt. And when we melt it, it will adhere to fabric, or if you have it facing the wrong way, it can adhere to your iron. So it's always good to double, triple check that you've got it facing the right way. We've traced our pattern onto the interfacing. So we're going to go ahead and cut this out, and we don't need any seam allowance for this. You can cut it out exactly on the lines we drew, taking extra special care to get into those little corner pieces. It's kind of fiddly, but so that's exactly the pattern with no seam allowance. And then we have our other two pieces over there. We're going to cut out one last thing now, which is the center of the daisy. And no seam allowance is needed for this. We're just going to cut right along here. I guess I could have traced it or pinned this, but it's a circle. I'll just trim carefully along the edges. And so we have all of our fabric components, and they're ready to go. We'll just put the pattern aside and keep that for making more. And we don't really need the center piece at this exact moment, so we'll just put that to the side. We're going to separate these two pieces of the goldenrod fabric. We're just going to be using this top one in the second. I'm going to very carefully examine my interfacing and find the pebbly side with the adhesive. And I'm going to make sure that the side with the pebbly texture is facing down, and very carefully place it on top of the piece of fabric that we have colored pencil lines on. I'm going to really carefully align the interfacing piece so that it matches up exactly with the outline I had drawn on the fabric. And then I'm going to very carefully iron it. Like I said before, the iron activates the interfacing. So what is the point of interfacing? Well, in this particular instance, why we are using it is because it adds stiffness to the fabric without adding too much bulk. And this is really great because when fabric is very bulky, it can be hard to create perfect curved seams with. But we don't have to worry about this because the stiffness from the interfacing is only in the middle. So we'll take this perfectly activated interfacing piece that we've made and we'll pin it on top of the other piece that we cut out very carefully so that they align perfectly. If you are like an active sewist, you make lots of stuff, this will be easy peasy for you. If this is one of your first sewing projects, just take it slow and give yourself patience. You will get it, I promise. So I've pinned that just to keep it in exactly the same spot so nothing shifts while I am sewing this. I have a love-hate relationship with sewing. I love making stuff, like creating stuff with my hands is my absolute favorite thing to do. But I don't necessarily love sewing. Like the actual feeling of sewing, I'm I'm middling on. But coming up with ideas, it's just my favorite thing. So what I am going to sew is exactly along the lines of the outside of the interfacing where that colored pencil line that we drew is. I'm going to be using just a straight stitch with really tight stitches because we're going to be sewing along curves and they need to be strong. I am going incredibly slow in this. I'm literally doing 1 or 2 stitches, putting the foot back down on my machine, doing another stitch, lifting it up, turning it, doing 1 more stitch, trying to show you in real time how slow this is, because it's really important to exactly match the lines that we drew with the colored pencil. You really want to make sure you pay attention to those curves because whatever lines we make, that is going to be the final shape of the curve. So this is like the part of the project where it might be easier to sew by hand depending on how practiced you are with a sewing machine. I kind of like doing slow stuff. I've never actually sewn my own like clothes on a sewing machine, but I have hemmed countless things. That's about as high as my skills go. So it just goes to show this is not a project that you need to have advanced sewing skills to do. This is something I think a lot of people will be able to do. Just really taking my time and carefully following exactly the lines that we've sort of drawn out for ourselves here. And it is very satisfying to take a look at these when we are done. Now, this is very important. You want to leave one side unsewn. Right at the bottom here, you can see, well, this is my beautiful little stitch lines. Of course, I have to show this off a little bit. I'm very proud of myself here. But this part at the bottom, see how I did not sew this? That's very important. Do not sew one side. You can pick whatever side you want, but do not sew one side just yet, because we're going to turn this whole thing inside out. This is a step I urge you not to skip, even though it is very mundane and kind of a hassle and very fiddly. Okay, I've really talked it up a lot. I'm sure you really want to do it now. But we really need to cut these little notches into the seam allowance. If you don't do this, if you skip this step, your beautiful flower petals will just not sit right. This is something I learned the hard way when I was working on my prototypes. I didn't make as many notches in the first couple prototypes, and the petals did not sit as cute in those ones, but look at all these notches. I'm making sure that I can move these petals apart and that they are cut. You have to be really careful not to cut through what you have just sewn, but you want to make lots of notches. And now we have our pocket protector that we are all ready to turn back inside out. So this part is kind of goofy. You really gotta kind of like fiddle with it at first and start trying to turn these spiky little petals inside and push them through the hole. It's like one of those things where once you get going, it becomes much easier. You just gotta sit and futz with it a little bit. And this is where the chopstick starts becoming incredibly helpful, because all of these little petals, of course, if you have long nails, like, you might be able to get them, but not to the exact degree that they need to be. So I'm just using my chopstick to very gently push all of the flower petals completely out into their full selves, trying to make sure that nothing is stuck to itself, nothing is kind of sitting inside pinched. And we are going to iron these again, so you can really see the iron is a major player when it comes to this particular project. I'm just spraying a little bit of water on this because the material is cotton, so when you use water and then you iron it, it's a lot easier to press those seams. So basically I'm going along on all of the seams, and I'm using the chopstick every once in a while to make sure that everything is completely pushed out, and then I'm using the iron to flatten those parts really well. It's like not super slow going, but it's good to take your time with it and just make sure all of the seams are beautifully pressed. This seriously will make the difference between kind of a lumpy looking flower and gorgeous. Like, look at these on the left, those are pressed. On these two on the right hand side are not pressed. Do you see the difference? It's in the material. Alright, so this unfinished side, we are going gonna sew this, but not just yet. In the meantime, since we have the iron, I'm folding the seams inside and just giving that a little bit of a press, just so that it's kind of like visual. We can see where we're gonna be sewing when the time comes. But I just find pressing your seams, pressing the edges, it is the finishing touch to any project. As you can see now, we have this ironed pocket protector and it fits the pattern perfectly. Sometimes it's nice to just compare to make sure you're on the right path. Notice these dotted lines on the pattern. Those are the fold lines. We are going to make identical fold lines on our project. This is what's going to create the cute little pocket in the pocket protector. It's going to sit right inside your pocket, tucked neatly with the daisy showing on top. So once again, we're going to use our handy dandy iron and just press these seams really nicely to make them quite stark, and it will just make the rest of this project so much easier to do. I love ironing. I think it's actually a fun chore to do, especially ironing clothes. It's to me good fun. Alright, so now it's time to put the magnets in our pocket protector. We're going to use 4 magnets today, and they're kind of funny because they really want to stick to each other. Again, I have cement glue, but you don't need cement glue. It can just be fabric glue. A lot of what we're doing, the glue is sort of to just set it up, and then we're going to sew things so that they really stick and they really have staying power. It's kind of hard to see on camera, these magnets, because they're so small and they really want to stick to each other. We're just going to do 2 to start with. Now, I'm figuring out where I want my magnets to go. They need to sort of sit right underneath those bottom petals. So I'm using a toothpick to just kind of create an indentation on both sides in the fabric so that I can kind of eyeball where these need to go. I'll take just a little dot of glue on my toothpick and I'm going to go inside the pocket protector. This is why we did not sew this project up yet, because we still need to create the structure of this project. So I'm reaching inside and putting a little dot of glue in that corner where I want the magnet to go. And then I'm reaching carefully inside and I'm putting this magnet in the glue and then sort of from the outside moving it around to where I think it should be placed. And we're going to do the same on the other side. Take a glob of glue and then stick our magnet into it. You can kind of move it around. The thing is, you want to work with this while the glue is wet. You don't want to sort of stick the magnets in and then walk away, because while the glue is wet, we can kind of move these magnets around where they need to go. Now, I'm just taking regular thread, the kind we've been using for this project so far, not embroidery thread, but just regular thread. And I'm doing tiny little stitches in a circle all around the magnet. This is going to keep it super secure in place so that it doesn't slide around on the inside of your pocket protector. Even though we used glue, that's not secure enough. These magnets are, again, really strong. And I'm just doing little stitches. Doesn't have to be so neat because you're not even going to see these. Little stitches all around the outside. It is funny when my needle gets stuck to the magnet, I have to say. Kind of forget they're a magnet until that happens. And now that we've completely secured the first 2 magnets, we're going to go in and do the second side. The reason we're not doing all 4 at once is because the glue is not strong enough to keep these magnets from moving around to try to stick to each other. So before I sew these, as I'm placing them, I'm kind of flipping the pocket protector over to to make sure that they are aligned, but also magnets have a positive and a negative side. You want to make sure that these magnets stick to each other the way that they're supposed to, instead of repelling away from each other. Otherwise, your pocket protector is just not going to sit right. And then, my goodness, what would your little critter do at that point? Just be terribly heartbroken. So once again, I'm just on this side doing all these tiny little stitches around the magnets to keep them in place. I think I'm going to have to think of some kind of other project I can do with magnets. If you guys have any ideas of how I can use up the rest of these magnets, let me know. Although theoretically, I could make a bunch of other daisy pocket protectors. That's still an option. Okay, so now that these magnets are secure and working well, I'm going to sew up the open seam on the edge because we don't need to go inside of this anymore. The ironed seams make this so much easier, and I'm just doing straight top stitch on the machine to try as neatly as possible to close up this part of our daisy pocket protector. When I started working on this one, I did not think I had green embroidery thread. I was planning on using white, but I dug around in my sewing box and I found this. Isn't that always just the way you start digging and you find craft supplies you didn't even know you had? What a great feeling. I'm doubling up the thread, so I'm using 2 strands of embroidery floss here. And I'm going to start doing the decor part of the daisy. I'm just doing a very simple stitch all around the outside of the petals, just to try to accentuate them. I kind of think this adds a little bit of like a vintage look. There's like a homemade quality, and if you will, it almost is like a Yoshi's Woolly World element. I don't know, that might be reaching, but that's my inspiration. I'm gonna do both the top and bottom petals. You really don't need to do the inside because you'll never see that. That's gonna be tucked in the pocket. I really like how the green looks against the yellow fabric. It really ties in the green of the jumpsuit, and I think it's like perfectly matching. I'm not the best hand sewer, but I try to make my stitches as neat as possible. I think if you're experienced with embroidery or things like that, this will be very easy for you. But now I need to do one more thing to add to the structure of this pocket protector. This is something I learned along the way with my first couple rounds. I'm going to add just a couple of stitches to keep this front daisy petal flap facing down. You don't necessarily have to do this, but in my experience, it just makes the pocket protector sit really cute. It makes it sit nicely. The front flap doesn't like wave open in the wind. It's just one of those added elements that really elevates a project. Now we're going to do the inside, the little center of the daisy. And to start, I'm just using my glue again. We're not going to use very much here. I'm just taking a tiny little glob on my toothpick and I'm making the thinnest layer ever, like a super thin layer on my felt circle. I don't want to do too much because I don't want this part to be like crunchy. Sometimes glue can make things crunchy if it's too thick. So just a very thin layer, and slowly and with care, I'm going to place the middle part exactly in the middle on this fold. And notice how I'm bending it over the fold. This part is very important. I'm going to stick a pair of scissors, you can do anything, on top just for like 5 minutes to help the glue set. But of course, we're going to go around the edges to make this very adhered and to add just sort of a cute finishing touch. This is my other prototype. We're going to do the exact same thing. Notice the stitches. That's what we're going to do. So this is called a blanket stitch. I had never done this kind of stitch before this project. So if I can learn how to do it, I know you can, because I am like not a particularly experienced hand sewer. It's an extremely simple stitch. I'm sure you could probably even pick it up just from watching me do it. But if not, like, you can look up blanket stitch. It's one of the easiest ones to do. And I'm making sure to go through the felt and the fabric of the pocket protector to make sure it's really on there. It's really secure. Doesn't this add just such a cute finishing quality? I love how this stitch looks. I'm gonna do this for other projects too, because I don't know, I just love the look of it. I think it's so charming. I just love the way the embroidery floss kind of sits along the edge and creates a really cute outline to the inside of our daisy. And again, more Yoshi's Woolly World. And then I'm just gonna tie this off with a knot, a regular knot, on the inside so that you don't even see where this part ends. And believe it or not, that's all there is to it. We've completed this project. This is obviously a longer video because this is an ASMR video and we like to take our time here. But this is a project that you can put together in not too much time. It's not a lot to take on, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. Please feel free to take my idea, expand on it, change it, take the pattern and change it depending on your own pocket size, the size of your figure that you want to put in it. Maybe you have a bigger figure. It's totally possible. And if you are really concerned about your little guy, you can always attach a tiny elastic and sew that into your pocket protector so that it is like extra safe, secure. But I find that mine don't fall out at all. They're very secure, just with the magnets and how they sit in the pocket. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope that it was fun. I mean, I just had a blast making these. I've already made 3, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to make a bunch more for all my friends. Don't forget your free download for the pattern I made. It's in the description, so you can come back and download it or print it out now, whatever you like.